Hello, and welcome back. This video is about setting up the projectile blueprint and shooting from the turret tower. And a special thanks to all my supporters. Thank you for helping me help others. We're going to start by creating the projectile blueprint. So this will be a blueprint actor. We'll just call this BP projectile. In here, we want to add a static mesh. And we're going to have a variable for the target. This will be a BP enemy base. And we're also going to add a last distance, which is just a float. We're going to compile this so that we can set this float value to something very high. And then effectively all this is doing is we're going to add a function move towards target. This will take in a delta float parameter. And this is being called from event tech. First thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our target is valid. In the case where it's not, usually because the enemy has been destroyed already, we're just going to destroy this projectile. So then we're going to get the actor location. I'm going to duplicate that. The first one is for the target. So the target minus the projectile's location gives us the direction, and from that we call vector lengths to get the distance. We're going to promote that to a local variable. In the case where our projectile is less than 20 units away from the target, we're going to have a branch. However, we also want to check if the distance is greater than the last distance that we will save. In both those cases, we can put in an OR here. So the reason we have this secondary check is because while this should work fine, 99.999% of the time, there can be cases where you just have a little blip of lag or something, and your projectile going towards the target shoots past the target. So if the distance ends up being larger than the last distance we saved, that means it shot past the target, and we can just basically call it done at that point. Instead of what would happen would be it would just, do a 180-degree turn, so to speak, and just head back towards the target. It's also a good check in case this is just kind of a bad value. So in the case where this condition is met, we're going to create another function. This will just be on hit target. All we're doing in here for now is just destroying this projectile. The false path will be moving the projectile itself, so we're just going to put an early return here, so we don't need to do any further logic. For the movement of the projectile, we're going to take the direction over here. We're going to call normalize. And then we're going to save that as another local variable. We'll call this direction. So for that, we're going to get our projectiles actor location. We're just going to add, we're going to take this normalized direction. We're going to multiply it by a value based on our delta that we sent it, which will be right down here at the bottom. We're going to multiply the delta first by some value which will represent the speed. This could be saved as a variable, but for now we're just going to set it to 400. And then drag that into here. And we're doing that so that we can set the new actor location. And lastly, we also want to set our last distance to the current distance. Otherwise, that double check will never work. With that set up, we want to create a child projectile. Call this one BP turret projectile. And in here, we're just setting our static mesh to the bullet. And then in our weapon class, or blueprint, we want to change our fire enemy to grab our target. We'll also do a validated get here. And we're doing this so that we can spawn actor from class. For now, our transform will just be the current actor's transform. So we want to be able to send this target directly over to the newly spawned actor. So to do that, we need to, in our projectile, go to our target variable, set it to instance, editable, and expose on spawn. Now, if we were to go in here and set this to a BP projectile, we would have the target value here. However, the projectile is going to be different for each weapon. So then we can promote this to a variable. We'll call this the projectile class. And since it set this as an actor, now the target is not valid. So then we can change this as well to BP projectile. Hover over it for a sec and click on class reference. This will then want us to change the variable type back to what it was. Once that's done, we refresh and it's back to looking good. We can leave this collision handling override as default because I forgot to go in here when we set up our static mesh. This is not a collision-based system, so we can just turn no collision on here. It should have no issue being spawned. And then lastly, in our turret weapon, we want to then set our projectile class as turret projectile. We'll start that up, create a tower, and it's not firing. Let's go into our weapon. We know this target is valid because it's turning to face it. So initially this wasn't creating the projectile. I'm still not entirely sure why, but when I went in here and I cleared out the setting that was here, in the turret weapon I did the same thing here. I cleared it out, reselected, and then it was fine. So Unreal doing weird Unreal things, I guess. However, I did also notice in the projectile, I forgot to connect this pin. That also needs to be up there. And then also in our enemy base, I just removed the line here so that it's not spamming constantly and killing the enemies as we go. So with that, So the projectile is being fired at the enemy, it's following the enemy. You can see that the orientation isn't incorrect. There's kind of two reasons for this. First of all, when we imported the assets from Kenny's tower defense kit, as I had to do with the turret here, you have to rotate it 90 degrees. So for that, in our turret projectile, yeah, and the projectile here, they're all going to be like that. So we can then just set our rotation on Z to -90. That will resolve the first part of that issue. So you can also see that the projectile itself already has a base rotation based on the object that spawned it. So that's good. But as you see here in slow-mo, it's just going that same direction, even though it's actually moving towards the enemy. So we can easily correct that by in here. Just pop this over here. We will take our direction. We'll call set actor rotation. And we just drag our direction in here. It'll convert it. Reset up the positioning for everything here. Now we have the bullets following the targets. And we'll follow up and add damage in a future video. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video and would like to see more, you know what to do. And if you would like to support this channel, watch these videos 2 weeks early, or just want to download the project files, you can do so through my Patreon linked below.